How's it going, everybody? This is Ask Me Anything About Politics. So, if you got any questions about politics, let me know in the chat. Give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can be like trying to learn a new language. So, this is what this show is here for, just to answer all of your questions about politics in a non-fighty, non-judgy kind of a way. This is not one of those shows where I yell at people or we get into debates with each other and we fight amongst each other. This is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you're a Republican. If you got a question about politics, it can be as simple or as complicated as you like. Then I will give you a good faith answer. Maybe you're a Republican and you're like, why are Democrats like this? Then, you got a real life Democrat here that you can ask that question to. Maybe you're somebody on the far left and you're wondering why somebody who's progressive would call themselves a Democrat. Well, this is your opportunity to ask that question as well. Or, if you're just learning about politics and you have simpler questions about, like, what's a filibuster, or what's a continuing resolution, or what's the reconciliation process, those questions are all completely available and viable to you as well. There's no judgment here, there's no roasting, there's no debating. I'm not going to yell at you for being a tanky or a MAGA or a cuck or anything like that. There's no such thing as a dumb question here on the live stream. We don't get into fights here on the live stream. We are just here to answer all of your good faith questions with good faith answers. And, I do my best to be as objective and unbiased as I possibly can be, while also adhering to what is actually going on in government. It can be really difficult to parse what's really going on these days because there's so much misinformation and propaganda, and nobody knows where to turn to. Nobody knows what information is accurate or reliable. So, this is the place where you can get clarity on a lot of those issues. I am happy to be a resource for you all to even it can be as simple as, what do we do, Jarrett? Like, what do we do about everything that's going on here? I can answer that question for you as well. Cflon says, why are Democrats in power denying that crime is an issue? Democrats in power are not denying that crime is an issue. They are just saying that the reasons that Trump gave for deploying the military in DC and Los Angeles are bullshit, which are accurate. The National Guard is not trained to stop crime. They are not stopping crime. They are not in areas that are high crime. They are not in cities that are the worst for crime. So yeah, I reject the premise of your question, Cflon, but thank you for being here. Crazy Monsoon, good to see you again. Have you ever thought about going into politics yourself? I have, but I don't know if it's in my stars. All right, thank you. Excellent questions so far, everybody. Welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. I'm Jared. I'm here to answer all your questions about politics, regardless of if they are simple or complicated. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. There's no fighting here. There's no roasting. There's no debating. I'm not trying to own anybody or prove that people who are different than me are stupid. I am just here to answer all of your good faith questions about politics. Glockwork Orange, howdy back at you. All right, welcome to the live stream, everybody. Put your questions about politics in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a good answer. Cflon says, I agree with that, but I have seen multiple interviews where reps just say crime is down. Crime is down. That's not denying that crime is not an issue, Cflon. Crime 100% is down. Dennis St. Vincent says, why bother with long established politicking? An American autocrat will impose his will on everyone. What autocrats want is people to believe what you just said, Dennis, that there's something inevitable about their rise to power, and that any resistance is futile. And so do not give them the gift of your pessimism and your cynicism. Fight them back with your hope and your optimism, and recognizing that the reason why they're acting like this is because they are weak and they can be stopped, and so we should stop them. Silvers Camaro says, DC had the highest violent crime in the U.S. by capita. No crime is down. It's hidden now. Silvers Camaro, I do not believe that what you're saying is accurate, and also those aren't questions. If you want to stay on the live stream, ask a question. Two-Tailed Fox says, is it true that greedy corporation CEOs have significant influence on how the country is run? Yes. In fact, anybody who has a lot of money has significant influence in how the country is run, because we have a political system that invites people with power to use their their money to try to sway election outcomes and to try to influence politicians. Cute little Finn says polar opposites, comedy, politics. That's not true. I have a lot of really good political jokes in my stand-up, and I know they're good because people laugh at them. Lemon says, "Do you believe that MacArthur was wrong in his beliefs?" You'll have to be more specific. Which MacArthur are you referring to? All right, thank you. Excellent questions so far. Ann Smith says, "Israel first?" No. So that's a really weird question, Ann Smith. Welcome to the live stream, everybody. My name is Jared. I'm here to answer all your questions about politics. So if you got any questions about politics, put them in the chat. Dennis San Vincent says, "So resistance is a patriotic duty of a citizen, like troops oath fight, foreign or domestic." I mean, I think so too. You know, Dennis, I 100% believe that resistance is a patriotic duty. Lemon says, "Very sorry, General MacArthur, before his discharge." Yeah, you know, Lemon, I'm not 100% sure what you're referring to here. What incident is this recent history? You know, please, more details. Ann Smith says, "Not really. All of our politicians are Israel first." That is not accurate, Ann Smith. Israel and AIPAC have a lot of influence because they have a lot of money. Here's the thing, Ann Smith, we want to all yell at politicians for being too beholden to Israel and AIPAC, but if you stand against them, then they fund your primary challenger, and then suddenly you're out of a fucking job. So maybe if we voted for politicians that stood up to AIPAC and Israel, then we would have a government that stood up to Israel and AIPAC. But as it stands, the American population is fucking believing all of the bullshit that AIPAC and Israel puts out about our population. So, you know, what are you going to do? You know? General MacArthur's. I'm not going to say that word. Alrighty. Thank you, everybody, for being here. My name is Jared. I'm here to answer all your questions about politics. So put your questions in the chat. There's no roasting, there's no debating, there's no owning, there's no calling people stupid. I am just here to answer all of your good faith questions about politics. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. And hey, maybe there are certain questions that you're worried if you ask your friends in person that they will, you know, they'll judge you. They'll think that you're a MAGA person or a libtard person, or this is the place where you can ask those questions. And there's no judgments or roasting or debates whatsoever. I don't care if you're a Republican. I don't care if you're a Democrat. If you're a MAGA person and you want to ask a question to a Democrat in good faith and not just call me a cuck, then I will engage with you as well. Michelangelo says politics is fine, but where's the funny? You know, it comes up from time to time. Lemon says General MacArthur was a general in the United States Army who had beliefs to use nukes against China. Oh yeah, I don't think that we should use nuclear weapons at all. Lemon. Crazy Monsoon says, "Is it cold in LA? You're wearing a coat." No, but I do like to start off the live stream with a little hoodie, and then I take it off when I get too warm. Let's see here. Dennis St. Vincent says, "Kent State Massacre was the '60s civil rights Vietnam turning point. Will we have one like it? I sure hope not. You know, we can definitely, the Trump administration wants there to be escalations of violence for the National Guard to respond to, and for that violence to scare people into silence and complicity. So I hope that people will heed that warning and do lots of nonviolent resistance and avoid the National Guard." Martin Covarrubias says, "Who was the last lunatic in the White House?" The same one that's currently in the White House. True Seeker says, "What do you think the idealized Republican future looks like?" It looks like a new aristocracy where the rich are lords and kings and queens, and we are all just fucking serfs, tilling the soil, drinking up the runoff from their chemical factories, getting cancer, dying young, living in strife and struggle, and never being comfortable. Richard Cripple says Trump is great. All right, well, you're out of here, buddy. That's not a question. Joey says, "Thoughts on Gavin Newsom running for POTUS?" He clearly wants to. I like the way that he's trolling Trump. He's not my first choice. I'm not going to vote for him in the primary, probably. But, you know, if he wins the primary, then I will happily and enthusiastically vote for him and try to get him elected in 28. Gambler says, "See, here's the thing. I don't care what anyone has to say anymore. If social media has done anything, that's not a question." Landon says, "Two-party system will always end in disaster." That is not something that any human being knows, Landon. The two-party system, I think, is fine. It's not perfect. But until we get ranked choice voting, third parties are just not part of the equation. JCast says, is there anything we can actually do about the tyranny that's coming? 100% JCast. I would encourage you to go check out the link in my bio. Go to my Discord. I have a whole thread posted called The Work, which is basically what everybody like me and you can do to fight back against the Trump administration and Tiller. And let's see here. I don't know what 3D Doritos are, Tallinn, but I don't think that liberals did that. Michelangelo says they're putting up anti-Newsom something. Buva says, are you a liberal? I like to call myself a progressive. I'm a Democrat. I don't really know what the difference is between a liberal and a leftist, you know. Tip says the greatest commander-in-chief is President Donald Trump. That is not a question, and is also wildly inaccurate. So you are out of here. Scrolling down to the bottom, Fogwar Productions, the Dark Gavin memes have had me howling, to be honest. Yeah, you know, they're doing a good job with that shit. Blockchain Trucking says, what is the end goal of tariffs? Is to get rid of employment taxes. The end goal of tariffs is, there's a bunch of things that tariffs do good for the Trump administration, but bad for the rest of us. Number one, it puts more of a financial burden on people who are already struggling, and the Republican Party wants people to be desperate and struggling so they can't fight back. Additionally, companies can bribe Trump to exempt them from tariffs, and so Trump himself is benefiting personally, financially from these tariffs because, you know, Apple or Amazon or whoever will go to the Oval Office and give him a fucking gold statue and go, hey, it'd be really great if you could exempt us from these tariffs, and then he does. Let's see here. Yeah, you know, it is not hurting the rich the same way that it is hurting the poor, and that is the entire Republican doctrine. Landon Vindrine says, if the country wouldn't be so divided, I agree how it can work, but I don't see how it's working now. I mean, the reason why it's divided is because millionaires and billionaires and Republicans are flooding the social media narratives and, you know, and mainstream news with these stupid culture war fights that make people fight amongst themselves instead of focusing on attacking the wealthy class and the Republican Party that is working with them to cement their power. Ragon Gordon says, what happens with Bill Gates? What happens with Bill Gates at the White House? I don't know what you're referring to. Izagi Yoichi says, what do you think about socialism? I think we need a little more socialism in America. There already is some, you know, everything that we use our taxpayer dollars for that supposedly helps everybody, you know, like public schools and the fire department and the post office and shit like that. That's all socialism. I just think we use a little bit more, like socialized medicine, for example. Larry says, are you for Trump fighting crime? I don't think Trump is fighting crime. I think that he is trying to flex his muscles and assert totalitarian rule over America. Raigon Gordon says, I heard he had a meeting at the White House. I have not heard about Bill Gates having a meeting at the White House. Sunny D says, do you think it's okay for a doctor to hang Trump flags in his practice where he's treating Medicare patients? I mean, I don't think that a reasonable human being should be supporting Donald Trump. If you are going to a doctor who is supporting Donald Trump, then I would be extremely concerned about where they're getting their news from and, you know, how, like, what their doctrine is medically. You know, like, this is the president who said that COVID wasn't a thing, and I would not want to go to a doctor who believed that COVID wasn't a thing. But I mean, it is a kind of a free speech kind of a thing. Like, they're allowed to fly wherever flags they want. You just don't have to go to that doctor. All right. Let's see here. Perry says, you are only a leftist that knows nothing. I am way more than that. I'm also the dude that's fucking your mom. Alrighty, scrolling down to the bottom. Kay says, making up imaginary crime to fight is not actually fighting crime. Unfortunately, that is accurate. Nostradamus, great to see you again. Besides doing the work, how can we fix the economy? I mean, what exactly do you mean by that, Nostradamus? Do you mean, like, if I was, you know, emperor of America, how would I fix the economy? Or how do individual citizens right now fix the economy? Can you be more specific? Sunny D says, do you think, all right, I did that one already. Scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments. K Pity says, name 5 things you hated about Biden. Why do you want me to do that, K Pity? Can you answer my question before I answer yours? Sims says, I'm definitely following after that last comment. You're welcome. Dan Blackroyd, excellent to see you again. I can't think of a time I ever saw a flag in a doctor's office. Yeah, it is kind of a weird thing to hang up, you know? K Pity says, that's what I thought. No, K Petty, that's what I thought. I thought that you were not here in good faith, and you have proven to me that you are not here in good faith. So, yeah, I can't believe you could not you could not answer my question. Why do you want me to name 5 things I hated about Biden? Harris says, your opinion of Palestine and Israel. I have the exact same opinion about Palestine and Israel as I do about every country, which is that they should all have a right to exist, and the people that live there should have a right to peace and prosperity, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The governing bodies of both of those countries, on the other hand, I am firmly against. The Netanyahu coalition government is extremely right wing. They're openly doing war crimes and genocide against the people of Palestine. And the people of Palestine are currently being governed by Hamas, which is a terrorist organization who are doing war crimes against the people of Israel. So I'm against both of the governing bodies, but I am for the citizens. All right. Looks like a butterfly emoji says, your opinion on Azerbaijan and Armenia. Unfortunately, that is not my area of expertise, butterfly. So sorry about that. Gay Pity, what's your question? I just joined. Your prompt is ask anything. Well, you didn't ask, you demanded. You said, name 5 things you don't like about Biden. My question was, why do you want me to name 5 things I don't like about Biden, Gay Pity? Let's see here. Thank you for your questions, everybody. Nostradamus still waiting on clarity on that one thing. Let's see here. K Pity still waiting for you to tell me why you think it's important that I name 5 things I didn't like about Biden, who is not president anymore. Let's see here. K Pity says, "Bro, it's your prompt, not mine." All right, well, answer my question. It's my live stream. I set the rules, and I'm not naming 5 things I don't like about Biden unless you tell me why you want me to do that. Josh says, although against the law, is there a possibility Trump will go for a 3rd term? There is a 100% possibility, Josh. I'm not sure the mechanism that he will try to use. I don't know if he's going to try to petition the Supreme Court or Congress, or if he's just going to declare martial law and cancel all elections, but he is going to try to stay in office until he is dead. That is full stop. I will bet the house on that. K Pity says, I'm asking because you said to ask anything. Sounds like you need to change your prompt. No, K Pity, no. I know exactly why you're asking, K Pity. I know why you're asking. I just need you to say that. All right. Josh says, I'm fearing that you're right. You don't need to fear, Josh. You can just do the work to try to stop him along with me. Scott says, thoughts on Mamdani? I like him, and I need people to recognize that the billionaire class is not done trying to torpedo him. Even if he wins the general election, they're still coming after him the way that they went after Bill de Blasio. Allie Down B says, can you explain how Trump is ruining our economy? I'm just interested because I've heard a lot of things. Sure. So it's happening on a bunch of different levels, Allie. I would say number one, we are ruining all of our trade relationships. And those trade relationships are vital for people being able to sell the goods that we make here in America to other countries. Additionally, it is making it way more expensive to import essential, resources like aluminum and steel and stuff like that, and coffee and bananas, things that we can't make here in America. And that's putting a strain on the purchasing power of Americans, which is also going to slow the economy if we aren't buying as many things. Additionally, the immigration policy is making it so that we have less produce available to us because all of these deported workers are not there to pick the crops. And so there are farmers whose crops are dying on the vine, which means that there's less food available, and which means the prices go up because there's less supply. So that increases demand, which increases prices. Additionally, there aren't as many laborers to try to build houses. And without houses to buy, then the housing market is stagnant. There's just more instability in the market as well, which is really bad for our economy. The value of the dollar is plummeting. The bond market is plummeting. I can't say enough bad things about what Trump is doing to the economy. Fog of War Production, what's your thoughts on Trump taking in 600K international students from the PRC? Fog of War, I love you. I don't know enough about that to opine. D says, can you name one important country whose trade relationship with the U.S. is completely ruined? I don't know if any relationship has been completely ruined, but basically our trade relationship with Canada, with Mexico, with Europe, it's ruined. It is ruined. Epic TV says, this is the comedy part, right? Nah, the comedy part is when I fucked your mom. Blockchain Trucking says, where are crops dying on the vine? I haven't heard anything about that. Google blockchain, Google it. You will see many stories of farmers complaining that they cannot hire people to pick their crops, so they are dying on the vine. Ryan Little says, my company is up over 20% over the last year. You're full of it. Ryan Little, as I'm sure you are aware, just because you are not experiencing something does not mean that it is not happening. Butterfly emoji says, do you believe the Republican Party and the MAGA Party are two separate parties now? No, they are one party. It is the MAGA Party, plain and simple. Allie Down B says, is it even legal for Trump to run for a third term? It's not, but that doesn't stop him if the people who would enforce that are on his side. And the only agencies that would stop that are the judiciary, the Supreme Court, the FBI, Fifth Circuit judges and shit like that, or Congress. And because the Republican Party has completely captured those organizations, they are not going to do anything to stand up to Trump. He could literally murder their families and they would still not vote to impeach him or remove him from office. Scott says, what part of Mamdani's ideas are sustainable or logical? All of them, Scott. Beautiful Inside Out says, he's lying. Who's lying? Lisa says, his business must be that of the private prison industry that is benefiting from this administration. Yeah, maybe that is. Maybe that is his business. Scott says, explain more. Sure. I mean, his policies are to tax the rich and use that money to relieve some of the financial burden of the 99%. And there's nothing more sustainable than that. That is the building an economy from the bottom up. It is the opposite of trickle-down economics, which we know doesn't work. We are currently suffering from 50 years of trickle-down not working. HC Cali says, is Miller recreating McCarthyism with modern terrorism consequences? 100% HC Cali. Every shitty political thing that has happened in history, from McCarthy to Schnazi Germany to what's currently going on in Russia, Hungary, Turkey, like that is what the Trump administration is trying to do. It is all the same fear-mongering, authoritarian playbook, fascist shit, Landon Vidrine says, what do you think of Gavin Newsom? He's fine. He's not my first choice, but he's totally fine. He's a perfectly acceptable governor. I am sure he will be a perfectly acceptable president. Scott Clara says, the country was prosperous post-World War II. Top tax rate was 90% most social programs. Did you mean 90% or 900%, Scott Clower? Oh, right. Yeah, that's what I thought. HC Kelly says, that's what I was afraid of when he said that yesterday. D says, don't tell me it's the one caught live on TV saying is a fantasy. What? Oh, I don't know what that means, D. Can you clean that up? Beautiful Inside Out says, the guy that said his business is doing great. That's what I thought, Beautiful Inside Out. Scott says, how can that be someone's main plan? Why? What is the problem with that, Scott? I don't understand this energy that you're coming at me with. It feels like you have a very specific agenda and that you're not actually asking me substantive questions, Scott, but prove me wrong. Allie says, any news on any running delegates for 2028? I don't know, Allie, but I will say that what's more important is we got midterms coming up in 26. Same response to you, Crazy Monsoon. My favorite candidate for 28 is everybody that's running in the midterms in 26. D says, it won't let me post it because of the word. I don't like Trump, but I don't believe E. Jean Carroll. I mean, a jury found that E. Jean Carroll's claims were valid, so I don't know why you wouldn't believe her. Beautiful. I saw that one already. D says there was not enough evidence for a criminal charge, only a civil suit. Yeah, and the civil suit was successful. So I don't know. Why are we fighting about this? D, like, is it really that important? She went on TV saying RP is a fantasy. I don't know. I don't know anything about that. Scott says, I'm trying to learn about him. No idea. Trying to be pushed. I guess my question then is, what do you think is bad? What do you think is wrong with taxing the wealthy and then using that money to help people, Scott? Because that's what Mamdani's platform is. Justin says, maybe because the judge who ruled was a Clinton-appointed judge. There wasn't such a thing as politically motivated judges until Trump started appointing politically motivated judges, Justin. That's a little bit of an oversimplification, of course. I believe that people like Alito and Thomas are obviously politically motivated, but for a long time, we just believed that judges were doing their job, but then Trump came along and was like, well, that doesn't count. He's a Clinton judge. He's an Obama judge, Scott says, I just don't think that's how capitalism should work. Why not, Scott? It's how it worked in the past, and it worked better than what we currently have right now. Let's see here. MAGA versus Trump did not provide any alternative scenarios, only attacks on her character. Sounds about right. Blockchain Trucking says, isn't it true that anytime you increase taxes that you slow the economy because nothing can grow? That is not accurate, Blockchain Trucking. It is millionaire propaganda. It's billionaire propaganda to try to get us to not tax them. Scott says, it's unfair. People worked for their money. Billionaires largely did not work for their money. Nobody works harder than a janitor with 3 jobs, and billionaires do not work $1 billion worth. They inherited their money. They got it through ill-gotten gains like exploitation and unfair labor practices and monopolization, market capture, shit like that. Justin, yeah, I don't know. I'm not here to talk about E. Jean Carroll, my guy. Quiz locked in says soft secession 101. I did hear about this today. I don't know how viable it is. It is basically that blue states should begin financially detracting themselves from America because we are the earners and red states are the takers. I've heard the theory. I don't know if it's viable. Everything that I've read about the subject makes it seem like that blue states will lose that fight, even though they provide the majority of funding for red states. It is still America is still too powerful as a federal economic force for the blue states to sort of like band together and fight against. But I could be wrong about that. That's that is my that is my extremely hot and not fully formed take. Fogwar Production says, "What's your thoughts on Utah redistricting largely in favor of the Democrats?" Until we can get Democrats in every position of power to make partisan gerrymandering illegal, I think that every blue state should be gerrymandering so that they can counter Republican gerrymandering. Quiz Locked In says, "I'll have to do more digging on it. Thanks." Thank you. This Alex Thalurma says, "If we really want fairness, a flat tax is the best solution." Thoughts? A flat tax is not fair because a 5% tax on a rich person means a lot less than a 5% tax on a poor person. Right now, the system of our economy is rigged in a way where people that have a lot of money can get more money and people that are living in poverty can't get out of poverty. And that's not a fair system, in my opinion. So I say tax the rich, use that money to fix the system, make people's lives easier. I don't really see any morally objectionable issue with that, except for this weird idea that billionaires earned their billions of dollars when mostly they just inherited it or used these rigged systems to become extremely wealthy or exploited their workers, wage theft, things like that, you know? Let's see here. Scott says, of course they earned it. Are you listening to me, Scott? Most of them didn't. Most of them inherited it. Pays Joy says, I like talking about the gerrymandering because Utah is trying to fix it. I'm not too aware of what Israel is doing, what Utah is doing specifically. Sorry, I was reading another question as I was answering that. But yeah, I think that it is wrong for a state to adopt an independent redistricting strategy while Republicans are currently weaponizing redistricting to try to steal power federally. Justin says, only in this country do we hate on billionaires and say they didn't make smart decisions. I don't know if they made smart decisions, but they made a lot of immoral decisions. You can make a lot of money if you just don't have a problem with fucking over lots of people, Justin. And that is exactly what the billionaire strategy has always been, my guy. Riverboat Ron says, what do you think about the law against burning flags? It's kind of unconstitutional and also stupid. Just culture war stuff that Trump is doing instead of actually fixing things. He's cutting valuable government services. We no longer are doing any research medically, technologically. Scientists are fleeing the country. Doctors are fleeing the country. Infant mortality and maternal mortality is skyrocketing in red states. Prices continue to go up. Like, what's he doing? He's making it illegal to burn a flag? Great. Yeah, man. You fucking nailed it. Congratulations. Cause 808 says, did you hear about the bombing Orthodox churches and reporters? I did hear about that. That's fucking... Yeah, it's fucking infuriating. It's barbaric. D says, speak on Israel. I'm really interested in your opinion about that. Absolutely. So, Israel did war crimes against the people of Palestine. Hamas did war crimes against the people of Israel. I am against both of the governing bodies. I am for the populations of both of those countries. Right now, we are only providing we're only providing weapons and money to Israel. We should stop doing that. If we were giving it to Hamas, I would say we should stop doing that too. But right now, we're only sending it to Israel. Additionally, Israel is the more powerful partner in that region, in that, in that conflict. So as the more powerful party, I believe it is their job to seek peace, and not continue to annex territory and build illegal settlements and do fucking war crimes. D says, do you think Netanyahu hasn't resigned to avoid being arrested? 100%. Absolutely. He's keeping this war going to keep himself from getting arrested. Let's see here. Cuz808 says, did you hear that they had prior knowledge of October 7th but did nothing to stop it? That wouldn't surprise me. I did hear some reporting to suggest that Netanyahu was working with Qatar to fund Hamas so that he would have an enemy, so that he could justify staying in office. I'm not, saying that's 100% true. I just heard reporting on that. So yeah, he's a piece of shit. He's corrupt. He is allowing people to die, innocent people to die, so that he can stay out of jail and stay in political power. And that is, there's no words for how terrible that is. Right. Mercy 870 says, I feel like we have no reason to be in the Middle East at all. Let's just mind our business and trade. I don't have a problem with that idea, Mercy. I think that America has been overstepping a lot in the Middle East for a long time regarding military intervention and whatnot. And so, where we can assist and facilitate peace in that region, I think we should get involved. Where we can assist in weaker parties getting, bulldozed by stronger parties, I think that we should 100% assist there. But, we shouldn't be sending money and weapons to Israel because they're doing fucking war crimes, Alrighty, Mandy Kidwell Parkin, great to see you again. That sounds like Trump too. Why is this country so morally bankrupt? People got tricked into voting for really bad people, misinformation and propaganda. Cuz 808 says, it's bad when Putin and Kim Jong-un condemn you. Did they do that? Ooh, that's bananas. Anid says, what's your views on what party to support? Democrats, up and down the ballot. D says, do you report Republicans and Democrats push for support for Israel? No, I do not. D. The Democratic Party has the most politicians who are calling for America to stop supporting the war crimes that are happening in Israel. It is not the entirety of the Democratic Party, but it is way more than the Republican Party. There is a record number of senators who voted to stop sending money and weapons to Israel, and they were all Democrats. So I think that's a really important thing to point out for people. Alrighty, scrolling down to the bottom. Disgruntled Vet says they're all paid by AIPAC. That's a little hyperbolic, Disgruntled Vets. I would encourage you to be more specific in your language. Magaverse says, we may have made enough of a mess that we can't just pull out. We have to provide aid and build trust. Yeah, I like that philosophy also, Magaverse. D says, will Kamala Harris have stopped sending aid to Israel? I believe yes, D. She never said that she would. She only hinted that she would have a more aggressive policy against Israel. But also, this is another thing important thing to keep in mind, which is that Democrats listen to their constituents. When Republicans get yelled at by their constituents, they cancel their town halls and they hide in their fucking offices. When Democrats hear from their constituents, they change their policies. And we have seen this play out time and time again. Alrighty. Pays Joey says Biden didn't. Yeah, but he is not doing as much to assist Israel's genocide as Trump is right now. So where everything is concerned in politics, guys, better is better and worse is worse. Cuz 808 says, should Jerusalem go back to the Christians? I have zero opinion about that. Cuz Russell Deskins says, Democrats don't stand for shit, only anything Republicans are for against. That is wildly inaccurate. And I don't believe that you are going to ask a question, so you're out of here. El Predictor says, troops in Ukraine means good, right? I don't know what you mean by that. Hi says, why do Democrats only care about minorities once every 4 years? That is not true. Hi, we care about them all the time. And honestly, I would rather have a party that only cares about minorities once every 4 years than a party that is actively trying to destroy minorities 24/7. Anid says, do you believe in a two-state solution? Yes, I do. Hi says, why is the left only care about minorities? All right, I answered that one. Hi. Lie. You just need to keep the Democrat plantation going. Yeah, that's not a real thing at all. See you later. Somebody had a thing up here that I wanted to react to. David Douglas says it was safe to oppose because they knew it wouldn't pass anyway. Well, they still voted for it, David. I don't know what you want me to do about that. I can't magically switch the breakdown of Congress right now. Alrighty. El Predictor says, will Latinos still be targeted and deported in 2028? If Republicans are still in charge, then 100% they will. Scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments, cuz, in your opinion, who committed more war crimes, Russia or Israel? Oh, I couldn't even begin to answer that question. It's the Rocketeer. Great to see you again. Buffalo says, why do Democrats fight against our Second Amendment rights? Democrats don't fight against the Second Amendment. They try to enact reasonable, common sense gun control legislation. Buffalo. Disgruntled vets. They, being both parties, paid. Yeah, disgruntled, you're not asking any questions, so you're out of here. All right. Anid says, did you see about the Bang Bang? I did not. I mean, I heard about it, but it's like every school shooting. It's fucking tragic and, infuriating because, the Democratic Party has been working for a long time to try to stop gun violence at every level, and the Republican Party just, filibusters and, tries to stop any progress from happening, and then spreading lies about how the Democrats are trying to take your guns, We don't have to live in a country like this, guys. We don't have to live where we're terrified of our kids going to school. You just have to elect better fucking politicians who aren't going to lie to you about, about your precious guns being ripped out of your cold, dead fingers, Buffalo says, is there a need for different parties? I don't think so. We have the mechanism to change the parties from the inside out. We just have to vote in primaries. The problem is Americans don't vote in the primaries. Voter participation in the primaries is like 40%, sometimes less. The two things that I need to people to recognize is that, number one, America is not voting, and that everybody that's in charge right now is there because somebody voted for them. And number two is that not everybody in America agrees with you. So I wanted Katie Porter to win the Senate primary in California. She didn't. Adam Schiff won. I didn't then go, well, I'm not voting for Adam Schiff then because he's a fucking corporate set, blah, 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 blah. He's still the better option, so I'm going to vote for him, How insulting is that? That so many more people voted for somebody and you're like, no, doesn't count, no, terrible, sucks, blah, blah, blah. Alrighty. Pink Squirrel says, who voted for Trump or was it stolen? I'm waiting to see what the Rockland County case says, but all of the available data suggests that he won, quote unquote, fair and square. But I mean, they were cheating. They were doing voter suppression and illegal campaign finance contributions. Like, it is not legal for a billionaire to bribe people with $1 million lottery to get them to register to vote. That is wildly illegal. Anid says, you think it's a gun issue or a mental health issue? I think it's both. And the Republican Party is against solving either of those problems. So again, the issue is voting for Democrats. The solution is voting for Democrats. Mandy Kilo Parkin says, why isn't ranked choice voting a thing in the United States yet? Because the Republican Party won't vote for it. They actually have a bill trying to make it illegal. So I can even give you the House resolution number if you want to look more into that. D says, I thought the bribe was to sign a petition and the only requirement was being registered as a voter. I don't remember specifically, D, what the loophole it was that they tried to swim through, but the end result was getting more Republicans to register to vote. And that's illegal. I tried to give away stickers to encourage people to vote, and I got told by a lawyer that I would get in a lot of trouble if I did that. Buffalo says, what is the best political party to have in the U.S., if any? I think a progressive Democratic Party is the best. Let's see here. I don't think there should be restrictions, but I don't think they should be taken away. I agree. I think there should be restrictions, but I don't think they should be taken away. Let's see here. D says, do you think the U.S.-led invasion in Iraq was largely influenced by Israel? I don't know about that. I mean, we're talking about something that happened, in the early 2000s under a Republican administration. It really seems like the Bush-Cheney administration wanted to invade Iraq, and so they were looking for any intelligence to support that. It doesn't seem like they didn't want to do that, and they were bullied into doing it by Israel. But I could be wrong about that. Yamutha says, really wish we could clear the board and start fresh. Yamutha, we literally can. If you just vote in the primaries, you can get anybody that you want. You can vote for whoever you want, but you got to vote, and then you got to be okay with what your other fellow citizens did. Because you have the power. You have the power to convince people to try to vote for the person that you like better. But then if they don't do that, you then got to vote in the general. It's still really important that you vote in the general. Alex Sassone says, why don't you like Trump? That is a massive question, Alex. He's hurting a lot of people. And he's doing it maliciously. He is acting like a dictator. He's building concentration camps. He's ruining the American economy. He is making poor people struggle and minorities struggle. And he is a liar and a con man. He is accepting bribes through his crypto coin. It is, yeah, I can't think of enough negative words, Alex, for Donald Trump. Viral Hub says, why is Trump the GOAT president? Is he president of goats? Is that what you're trying to say? Thank you, Susie. I appreciate that. Kay says you have to vote in every election, not just once every 4 years. That is completely accurate. Leo Card says Tim Walz would be a good president. Yeah, probably. Bendy says, could you explain to me the difference between modern-day Republicans and traditional Republicans? Absolutely. So modern-day Republicans are MAGA Republicans, and their doctrine is Donald Trump. That is their entire doctrine. They have no doctrine except whatever Donald Trump wants, we do what he wants. Traditional Republicans were much more about limited government. They were about lowering taxes, which MAGA is also about lowering taxes, but they do other shit as well. The traditional Republicans were softer on things like immigration. They were much more eager to start wars in other countries. They were much more dogmatic about following the law. And so they would not truck with any of the illegal things that Donald Trump is currently doing. Viral Hub says, did you actually think Kamala was the best candidate the Dems could have put up? I think that considering the situation with less than 110 days left until the election, that Kamala Harris was 100% the right candidate to put up. And she was great, and she was better than Trump. So I don't really know what you are trying to accomplish with your comments there, Viral Hub. Joel Lunes says, assuming you are correct, how does that make Trump any different from Obama? I don't know what you mean by, there are so many differences between Trump and Obama. Can you be more specific in your question? Jay Lunes. Cece says, do you think Kamala Harris had any weaknesses that lost her the election? Honestly, I think her main weakness was that she had 107 days to mount an entire fucking presidential campaign. Blockchain Trucking says, are you upset that you didn't get to vote for your candidate in the primaries? No, I voted in the primary. I voted in the primary. So there was a primary. I don't really understand what the issue is there. Viral Hub. Oh my God, you're a Trump person. That makes sense. All your fucking stupid ass bullshit questions. Alrighty. Crazy Monsoon says, I kind of miss when the Republican Party was just all about greed and money. Yeah, completely agree with that. David Douglas says, her weakness was Joe Biden operatives running her campaign and being held to his policies. David Douglas, that may have been an issue that some people had with Kamala Harris, but we know from polling data that where she was spending the most time, she increased her vote share. So if she had more time to mount her campaign, she probably would have won. Jay Lund says, every single critique you gave for Trump could be said of Obama. That is a wild thing to say, Jay Lund, and I don't believe that is even a little bit accurate. But give me one single point that you think is the same with them, and I will tell you where I think the miscommunication is happening here. CC says, do you think Biden had to drop out because of the debate? I saw a bunch of articles on it at the time. I mean, I think Biden should have dropped out earlier, but I also do think that he had to drop out because of how poor his debate performance was. However bad the election went for Democrats in 2024, it would most likely have been worse had Biden stayed in. New Sin says, my whole family is Republicans, and I was the only one who voted for Kamala. Well, I'm very happy that you're a part of the coalition. Let's see here. Blockchain Trucking says the primary candidate was removed after being voted on. You didn't get to vote for Harris as a candidate. Blockchain Trucking, I know what you're doing. And so here's my question to you, all right? Biden drops out. There's 110 days left. States like Ohio that are run by Republicans are threatening to leave the Democratic candidate off of their ballots if they're not given the name of the candidate before the DNC. What do you think the Democratic Party should have done? Or do you just want to do this myopic, pretending to have an issue with the way that the DNC handled Biden dropping out because you think it's going to hurt the Democratic Party? Chase says, thoughts on Israel control? I'm against it. Buffalo says, what is your take on politicians have ability to insider trade? I think it's wrong. I think that it's mostly Republicans that are doing it, and you can see that breakdown. Right now, Josh Hawley and a bunch of Democrats are trying to pass a bill to make it illegal for politicians to do insider trading. And guess what? The party that is standing up against that, the party that is not allowing it to happen, is the party that is currently in charge of Congress. It is Republicans. Republicans like Rick Scott are out there saying that politicians need to be able to insider trade because this job doesn't pay enough for fucking millionaire Rick Scott. Alrighty, let's see here. David Douglas says Trump Obama both kept drone strikes going. Yeah, I don't think that Obama should have killed as many people with his drones, but Democrats and Republicans are operating under a different set of rules, where Democrats have to be extremely aggressive, otherwise they get called, fucking cuck libtards who want to hug the Taliban and kiss Osama bin Laden and shit like that. Scrolling down to the bottom. Let's see here. Mitch, congratulations, you are out of here. Oh my God, you're 0 followers. I'm really gonna fucking miss you. Let's see here. Mandy says, I thought that politicians were supposed to be civil servants, not rich. Yeah, I mean that's the ideal. Let's see here. Cece says it's almost like Biden was exploited. He should have been told to step down sooner. Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't put that past it. Cece, Jake Tapper wrote an entire book about this disaster of Biden deciding to run again. I haven't read it yet. I'm still waiting on it to come from the library. And so, if you want more information on what happened there, I would say go check out Jake Tapper's book. Whiskey ME says, can we do something about gun control in the U.S.? Yes, Whiskey ME, if we vote for politicians who know that we want them to do something about gun control. The problem is that America, more than 50% of the time, votes for politicians who weaponize the gun issue to get power, i.e. the Republican Party. Alrighty, scrolling down to the bottom. All right. Buffalo says, how do you feel about the Benghazi situation that happened during Obama's administration? There were dozens of hours of hearings about that, Buffalo, and no issue was found. There were no crimes. There were mistakes were made, but they were all mistakes that happened in good faith. So if there was something there to be found, it would have been found by the Republican Party, who did a fucking 1,000 hearings about it. Don Ensko says, if you hate America so much, why do you stay here? First of all, Don, I don't hate America. I was born and raised here, and I spent my entire life here, Don. So why don't you leave if you hate it so much? Strider says, when is diversity too much? I don't know. I don't think we've even gotten close to that limit there, Strider. So I'll tell you when that fucking happens. Dennis St. Vincent says, American politicians in the behest of American oligarchs, we have to realize and accept or not. Dennis, when you say things like that paint both sides equally with the same brush, you are giving cover for the worst party. The data is in, and the Democratic Party is not owned by the oligarchs the same way that the Republican Party is owned by the oligarchs. The platforms are different. The Republican platform is a giveaway to the rich. Democratic platform is pro-worker, pro-99%. So yeah, you can miss me with that both sides bullshit. Dennis, thank you for being here. Cece says, can you be specific on what restrictions you want on the Second Amendment? Sure, why not have licenses and mandatory gun safety training and mandatory insurance? Ilustiev says, what's your stance on Trump's war against cartels? It seems to be an act of aggression against Mexico and not respecting their sovereign borders. And also, it's kind of like he's not actually addressing the issues of why the cartels have power. In fact, he's giving them more power by making legal immigration so much more difficult. Additionally, didn't they pay him a bunch of money to sneak a bunch of cartels' family members into the country? So it's like, it's fake, it's not real. He's not really going to do anything to try to help, Bungie Dan says, how about you grow up? I grew up in your mom last night. Chris says, I have feelings that you prefer. Where's that? Blockchain Trucking says, how is the Democratic Party not owned by the oligarchs? Blockchain Trucking, you're not here in good faith. You don't care. I'm going to give you all the data and all the facts, and you're going to say I'm a liar or cuck or whatever, or you're going to change the subject. But I'll do it. This is the easiest point that I make every single one of my fucking lives. There are more billionaires in the Republican Party cabinets than have ever been in history. The Republican Party's platform is a giveaway to the rich. It is cutting taxes for the rich. It is cutting regulations for their businesses. You know, the things that make it illegal for them to pour wastewater from their chemical factories into our air and our water and our food and shit like that, so our kids don't get cancer and stuff like that. The Republican Party cuts those regulations so that those guys can become even more wealthy and powerful, and the rest of us can all just fucking go die. 75% of all billionaire donations in 2024 went to Republican candidates. And so, yeah, do billionaires give money to some Democratic politicians? Absolutely. But I would much rather have the Democratic platform that is somewhat diluted because of the influence of billionaires, as opposed to the Republican platform, which is a fucking giveaway to the billionaire class, which is then supercharged with fucking billionaire money. So yeah, it's different. Republicans are worse. Democrats are better. Fucking rinse, repeat, guys. Blockchain Trucking says, what percentage went to Democratic candidates? 25%. Easiest question I've answered all day. Chris Jenny Boost says, I think this guy right here is a loose game, and I watched him for 2 seconds and watched them spit out that doesn't make any second sense. Foamy Bat says, do you believe we should have a Second Amendment? Not necessarily. I don't really think that there's a value to having a right to bear arms, that we don't have a right to drive a car or anything like that, you know? Alrighty. Carmine says, no, seriously, why do they want politicians to bat for millionaires and big corporations? Why do they want politicians to bat for millionaires? I'm not really sure what your question means there, Carmine. Buffalo says, what do you think about the gerrymander that happened in Texas? It is just more Republicans trying to cheat to win elections. Chris says, I have a feeling you prefer the Democratic Party. That is 100% accurate, Chris. I do prefer the Democratic Party because they're better. Blockchain Trucking says, I'm not even going to engage further. Have a nice day. All right. So thanks for all your questions, buddy. Alrighty. So yeah, you're not going to engage with any of the facts that I just told you that proved my point about the billionaire class owning the Republican Party and the Democratic Party being for the workers. So yeah, you're just going to dip. You're just going to dip. Classic, everybody. Classic. All right, everybody. Send in your final questions. We are at almost an hour, so we'll probably be wrapping up soon. So thank you for being here. Thank you for all your questions and comments. And I have an ask for everybody that is watching this live stream, where if you know people who don't vote, if you know people who are not engaged in politics, who think that both parties are the same, maybe people who are soft Democratic voters or soft Republican voters. I'm not talking about people that already agree with me. I'm not talking about your MAGA uncle. I'm talking about people in the gooey middle who you are not confident that they are going to vote for Democrats in the midterms or even vote at all in the midterms. I want you to help me talk to these people. I want to have one-on-ones with them. I want to podcast it and really just get into these issues and talk to them about what they care about and have the kind of productive political conversation that gets people more engaged in the process, and then recruit them to be part of the fight against oligarchy and kleptocracy and aristocracy. So if you guys can help me do that and hit me up on my Discord, I'm happy to, maintain anybody's anonymity that doesn't want their name or face out there. But we got to build this project because it's not happening big enough. It's not happening fast enough. The authoritarianism is coming down the pike fast and furious. We need more people doing more work. And so maybe this is another thing I'm trying, guys, to try to get that to happen. All right, let's get into some of these questions. Foamy Bass says, do you think they made multiple parties so people would fight? No, I don't think so. I think that there were probably other motivations for it. But I do think that the billionaire class is flooding social media with a bunch of fake narratives to get people to fight. Buffalo says, have you enjoyed the conversation with you? Thanks for going live. Thank you, Buffalo. Appreciate you. Ilusiev says, goodbye. Have a nice day. It was interesting hearing your opinions. Thank you for being here. Eric Lex Cheese says, how much authoritarianism will be too much for the Republican Party? There is nothing that is too much. They are completely fine with America being the new Russia, the new Turkey, the new Hungary, the new Nazi Germany. Like, look at how many times Tucker Carlson has gone over to Russia and been like, this seems great. This seems awesome, Bradley says stock market all-time high. It was during the Biden administration too. Isn't that interesting, Bradley? Doesn't seem like you were the kind of person that would champion that, when it was happening. Chris says, what do you think about that 40% of online interaction is done by bots? Everything on the internet is fake, guys, so you got to take everything with a massive grain of salt. that you see on the internet. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Thank you, Mandy. I appreciate that. Glenn Pavlov 600 says, "Do you think with the militarization of our states will lead to martial law?" That is what Trump and the Republican want. They want to escalate things to martial law so they can cancel elections, and they can just throw dissenters in prison for no fucking thing and get rid of our First Amendment rights and our right to organize. It's just the worst version of fucking totalitarianism is what they want. Kay says, "Did you see a Democrat in Iowa flip the Senate seat by 20 points and broke the supermajority?" I did see that, Kay. Let's not get overly confident, though. We still have a lot of work to do. I am not going to be satisfied until every Republican is replaced with a Democrat or like a left-leaning centrist or something, or a left-leaning independent. Advice your dad would give says, "Is Trump the reason there's nobody left in the middle? Everyone claims the other side is evil." Trump is part of that, but I think mostly it's billionaires creating this narrative that the fight is between voters as opposed to the fight is between workers and the rich. Eric Likes Cheese says, "Does about to have a Democratic senator." Eric's like cheese. Maybe you want to clean that up a little bit. Terry Cow says, "What about a right-leaning moderates?" I mean, they have all capitulated to Donald Trump, so they can all fucking S my B's. All right, Bradley, congratulations. You're not asking questions, so you're out of here. Eric Likes Cheese says, "Utah gets to red district and stop the gerrymandering and get a Democratic senator." Yeah, Eric, I'm still not sure what you're getting at there, my guy. All right. Regular streaming schedule, everybody, is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. My DMs are open. You can email me through my website. You can get in touch via my Discord. The project of doing this, of trying to fix America and trying to fix, politics and trying to get more people engaged, more people voting, and more people voting for better politicians, that does not stop when the live stream stops. So please use me as a resource to get involved and get educated and get other people on board. We gotta fucking phone tree our way to a better country, to a shared reality where I tell you and you tell your friends and they tell their friends, etc., etc. So help me find these convincibles, guys. Help me find these non-voters. Help me find these disengaged people, and we can bring them into the project. Go to the Discord. Excellent resources there. Link is in the bio. What else? Oh yeah, there is one last thing. Jesse Lynn says, "He said S my B's." Joseph says, "Are you a Democrat or Republican?" I'm a Democrat. David Douglas says, "Stock market is a graph of rich people's feelings." Completely agree with that. And lastly, guys, if you want to support the show financially, you can, but obviously you do not have to. If you go to my website, you can find my store and a link to my Patreon. I would appreciate you guys getting involved there. You can also send gifts on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube and subscribe and do all that good stuff. I appreciate any support that you guys give me, whether it is the free kind or the paid kind. Wyatt says, "Why would you answer whether if you are a capitalist or not?" I didn't see your question. Why won't you calm the fuck down, Wyatt? I'm not a capitalist. I'm also not a communist. I'm also not a socialist. I believe in a mixed model like they have in Norway and Sweden. Alrighty, let's see here. Excellent questions, everybody. And unless we get any more questions, we're probably going to wrap up soon. So yeah, everybody, please do the work. We don't have enough people doing the work, and so we need more people doing the work. And so please do the work. Help me find the people in the squishy middle. MAGA versus what's on the shirt. Somebody sent my boss, Steve Hofstetter, somebody sent him these T-shirts that had like silly sayings on them that he made. I think he wanted Steve to help promote them, and they were too small for Steve because he's like 6'5", and so he gave one to me, and it says, "My dog and I talk trash about you," or something like that, and I just like it because it's really soft. Alrighty, thanks again for being here, everybody. Do the work. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.